Researchers are again sounding the alarm on the state of the climate, warning temperatures are likely to surge to record levels in the next 5 years. The World Meteorological Organization has found there's a 2/3 chance the global average temperature will pass the key 1.5 degree warning limit for the first time sometime between now and 2027. With that threshold breached, even if temporary, scientists say it demonstrates how quickly climate change is accelerating and the impact will be increasingly severe. The risk rises thanks to continuing high-level emissions from human activities and a developing El Niño weather pattern in the Pacific later this year. More heat in the atmosphere will produce the higher temperatures, meaning more extreme weather with devastating environmental impacts.
At the end of the day, every bit of degree warming is not good, and we need to stop that. I always worry that humans kind of become desensitised to these ever-falling records and forget what 1.5 and 2 actually mean. And at 1.5 degrees, the Great Barrier Reef will probably be dead within my lifetime. These are very serious impacts that we need to pay attention to.
The dire predictions have again prompted scientists to call for more to be done to reduce emissions.
It will be sad the day we pass 1.5, but it's not a reason to give up. We have to continue working out how we can reduce emissions of greenhouse gases as much as possible.
Those stats, Lesley, 66% chance we'll pass that 1.5 degrees global warming threshold between now and 2027. It will only last a year. Given the brevity, just how big a deal is this?
Well, it's a very big deal. That 1.5 degrees is embodied in the Paris Climate Agreement as a point that we don't want to cross. So if we cross it in the next 5 years, we'll be crossing it much earlier than scientists previously thought. And yes, we may only cross it for a year and then come back a bit. But the fact is that the global warming trajectory continues. And it's pretty certain that at least by 2030 we'll be crossing it all the time.
So what sort of damage will be done with just 1 year in excess of that 1.5 degrees with respect to the environment as well as the globe's ambitions around net zero, around the Paris targets?
Well, in a lot of ways, crossing that 1.5 degree line is a potent symbol of failure of the global community to limit emissions. And so what we've got to be prepared for is more extreme climate events that cause damage. So potentially more floods, more droughts, more bushfires, depending on where you are in the world, more extreme heat waves and more extreme hot days. All of those things don't just affect the environment, but they affect our economy, our food security, our health. You know, pretty much everything you can think of is affected by climate.
And that's something that I believe the Secretary-General of the World Meteorological Organization spoke to, the far-reaching repercussions for food security, as you just mentioned, water management as well, and the environment. Just what will the Australian experience be as a result of that?
Well, I think we can look to our experience over the last few years. We've had some shocking floods on the East Coast. We had the Black Summer bushfires in 2019-20. We've had extreme heat waves just recently, as has Southeast Asia. So we need to be prepared, unfortunately, for more of that.
You mentioned that Australia has really suffered with floods, droughts, fires over the last decade or so. Is there a concern from climatologists and scientists that Australians might become desensitised to such events given the frequency that they're being seen?
Well, I think we do become desensitised between these climate extremes, and then when we do get a climate catastrophe, everybody wakes up again. We've got to not put our heads in the sand because it is absolutely inevitable that there will be more climate extremes with great impacts. So we've got to keep our eye on the ball. We've got to be very prepared. We've got to get better prepared than we ever have before. But we also have to be good global citizens and not keep contributing to the problem.
Outside of Australia's borders, which places around the world will be the most greatly impacted by this, perhaps irreversibly so?
Well, for example, our Pacific neighbours are getting hit by increasingly severe tropical cyclones. Globally, sea level rise is going up everywhere, and that is particularly having an impact on low-lying Pacific states. And countries in the world that have a lot of populations on their deltas that are subject to that. So, some of our nearest neighbours are really the most vulnerable.
We're also being warned that 1 year in the next 5 is going to be the hottest ever recorded. What is feeding into those forecasts and projections?
Well, there's two things. There's the background level of global warming, which unfortunately just keeps going up. But we're also expecting there to be an El Nino event by about the middle of this year, which generally brings warmer temperatures as well. So when we add the El Nino to the background increase in warming, it's pretty much inevitable that even more records will be broken.
And is that why we're likely to see less rain as well across the globe?
Well, we're likely to see less rain in Australia because that's what we usually get, especially in the east, from an El Nino. So we've had 3 years of La Nina, which has brought us a lot of rain, including that flooding along the east coast. We're now going into the dry part of the ENSO cycle. So we really need to start being prepared for less rain and potentially more severe droughts.
How do you hope the government and business and policy to respond to these findings?
Well, look, I think the new government and business are heading in the right direction, but nobody's going fast enough. So I'm hoping that this yet another dire warning will increase the urgency. And of course, Australia being the third largest exporter of fossil fuels to the world, we are continuing to develop and subsidise digging up and sending our fossil fuels offshore to be burnt. So we are a big part of the problem, and we have to face that responsibility as well.